Have you ever looked at the world, or honestly, at your own life, and wondered if any of it is actually going anywhere? One thing breaks, then the next, a spiral of mistakes and losses and fresh starts that fizzle, and underneath it all, the quiet fear that there's no thread holding it together, that it's just disaster after disaster, and then you die. If you've watched this whole series, you might feel that way about the stories themselves. 5 of them, and every single one ended in wreckage. A ruined garden, a murdered brother, a drowned world, a scattered people. It looks like the most depressing opening to any book ever written. But I want to show you something hiding in plain sight across all 5. There is one thread running through every one of these stories. And once you see it, not only does the entire Bible snap into focus, but your own life might too. This is why Genesis 1 through 11 explains everything that comes after it. Let's stand back and look at the whole landscape we just walked through. We started in a world spoken into perfect order, light out of darkness, life out of emptiness, a man and woman made in the image of God and called very good. No shame, no death, no hiding. Heaven and earth in perfect overlap, and God walking with his people in the cool of the day. That's the baseline. That's the way things were supposed to be. Hold that picture in your mind, the garden, because everything that follows is measured against it, and everything at the very end of the Bible is aiming to get back to it. And then, story by story, we watched it all come apart. Trace the descent, because it's relentless.
In the garden, one couple decides they'd rather be their own God than trust the one who made them, and shame, death, and hiding flood into the world. In the next generation, that sin spills out as a brother's blood soaking into the ground. A few chapters later, it spreads so far that the whole earth is corrupt, and God washes it away in a flood. And the moment the survivors get a clean start, they gather on a plain, build a tower to make a name for themselves, and get scattered across the earth in confusion. Read it straight through, and it really does look like a spiral with no bottom. Sin in a heart, sin between brothers, sin filling a planet, sin organized into a civilization. Each story, humanity ends up further from God than the story before. If that downward line were the only thread, Genesis 1 to 11 would be the bleakest thing ever written, and the only honest response would be despair. But that line is not the only thread, and the second one changes everything. Go back through those exact same 5 stories and watch for something else, because right beside every judgment, God does something he was never obligated to do. In the garden, the moment after the curse, God makes a promise. A child of the woman is coming who will crush the serpent's head. And then he covers their shame himself with garments of skin. With Cain, a murderer, God places a mark of protection so no one will take his life. In the flood, before a single drop falls, one man finds favor. An ark is provided with one door of rescue, and afterward, God hangs his war bow in the sky as a promise of mercy. And after Babel, after humanity is scattered, God walks up to one ordinary man named Abram and says, "I will make your name great, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed."
Do you see it now? In every story, sin gets the first word, but grace gets the last. Judgment is real, and every time, mercy outruns it. That's the thread. Not human goodness climbing up. God's grace reaching down, again and again, refusing to let the spiral be the end of the story. And here's why that matters for the whole Bible. The shape of these 11 chapters is the shape of the entire book. The Bible tells one story in 4 movements. Creation, God makes a good world. The fall, we break it. Redemption, God launches a rescue. New creation, God makes everything right again. And Genesis 1 through 11 hands you the first 2 movements complete, plus the opening note of the third. Creation in chapters 1 and 2. The fall and its spiral in chapters 3 through 11. And then at the seam, that promise to Abram in chapter 12, the rescue officially begins. Everything after Genesis 11 is God keeping the promise he whispered in Genesis 3. Abraham, Israel, the prophets, the law, the temple, the exile, the long wait. It's all one rescue operation, all driving toward the moment the serpent-crushing child of the woman finally arrives. Genesis 1 through 11 sets the trap of the human problem, and the rest of Scripture is God springing the solution. And the thread doesn't just wander forward, it runs to one place. Notice the pattern that's been building under all 5 stories. Humanity reaches up and fails, and God comes down. He comes down to walk in the garden. He comes down to find Cain. He comes down to shut Noah in the ark. He comes down to see the tower. Over and over, we climb and fall, he descends and rescues. So it should not surprise you where the thread finally lands, because one day, God came down for good.
Not as a footstep in a garden or a verdict over a tower, but as a baby in a manger. The whole golden thread of grace running through these stories was always pulling toward a single person. Every promise, every covering, every rescue, every time God stooped low to save, they were all arrows, and they all point at Jesus. Look how precisely he answers every story.
Adam was the first human who faced temptation in a garden and chose himself over God. Jesus is the true and better Adam, who faced temptation in a wilderness and chose obedience, undoing in one life what Adam broke. He is the promised child of the woman who took the serpent's strike on a cross and crushed his head in a tomb. Remember Abel's blood crying from the ground for justice? Jesus' blood speaks a better word, crying mercy for the very people who shed it. Remember the ark, one door, God's people carried safely through the waters of judgment? Jesus is the ark. On the cross, the flood of judgment fell on him, so that everyone in him comes through alive. And remember Babel, grasping upward to make a name? Jesus did the opposite. He came down, emptied himself, and was given the name above every name, which he now shares freely with anyone who stops building their own tower and simply comes to him. He isn't in the thread. He is the thread. Every story was secretly about him the whole time. And here's the part that should give you chills. Flip to the very last pages of the Bible, and you find the mirror image of where we started. Genesis opens with a creation. Revelation ends with a new creation. Genesis has a garden we were exiled from. Revelation has a garden city we're welcomed into. In Genesis, the tree of life is sealed away. In Revelation, it stands wide open, its leaves for the healing of the nations. Genesis brings the curse. Revelation declares there will be no more curse. Babel scattered the nations in confusion. Revelation gathers a countless multitude from every tribe and tongue and language, finally singing as one. And the death that entered in Genesis 3 is answered with words you'll want to memorize. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away. The Bible ends by undoing, one by one, everything that broke in its first 11 chapters. The God who walked with us in the garden comes back to dwell with us forever. The thread runs all the way home. So come back to where we started, that fear that your life is just disconnected wreckage going nowhere. Here's what this whole series has been quietly telling you. You have lived every one of these stories. You've reached for control in the garden. You've felt the resentment that murdered Abel. You've longed for a reset that would finally make you new. You've built your own little tower to prove you matter. If these stories are about you, and they are, then hear the good news buried in that. So is the rescue. The same God who refused to let the spiral win in Genesis is reaching down the thread toward you right now. You are not a random series of failures with no point. You are exactly the kind of person this entire book was written to find. And the one who came down through every one of these stories came down, finally, for you. Your job was never to climb up to him. It's to stop climbing and let the one who came down bring you home. Here's the whole thing in one sentence. Genesis 1 through 11 is the entire Bible in miniature. A good world, a deep fall, and a thread of grace that runs through every disaster straight to Jesus and straight to you. Behold, I am making all things new. That's the promise the very first chapters were always pointing toward. Not a spiral, a rescue. The story that started in a garden does not end in wreckage. It ends with every broken thing made new. Thank you for walking through Genesis 1 through 11 with me. If this series gave you a new way to see the book, and maybe your own life, do 3 things. Go back and watch any episode you missed. Share this one with someone who thinks the Bible is just disconnected old stories. And then open Genesis 1 and read it for yourself, knowing now what the thread is and where it leads. This is where everything starts. And now you know where it's going. We'll see you in the next series.